Hello and welcome to ReginaldESQ. I'm Underhook and this is my next in the series of looking at the armour changes to the HD remodeled tanks in 9.3. So today we are looking at the M5 Stuart. So what's happened? Well, basically with the M5 Stuart they have completely changed the turret. It is a completely different turret and they have modified the frontal armour. It is now identical, the armour is identical to the M5A1 Stuart, the Chinese version of this tank. So previously, previously the American M5 Stuart had a different turret and slightly different frontal armour. Anyway, we'll get into that right now. So we can see here the frontal plate is 64mm thick, the lower plate here, and that's exactly the same as it was before in 9.2. This area here is 38, which is the same as it was before, but this area used to extend up to about this point in the tank, quite a bit higher than it does now. So that's basically a nerf because this upper section is only 29mm. So now you've got a larger section of 29mm, and this 38mm section ends here instead of about here, I think it was. Now there was, or there is, a machine gun port just here, that right there. That was thinner at 25mm. Well, that's been eliminated, as they seem to be doing with all the HD remodeling now. They're getting rid of driver viewports and machine gun ports being weaknesses. So that's not a weakness anymore. So I guess that's a very slight buff, you could call it, 4mm thicker. The sides are basically the same, except now this blue area, which was only 15mm of spaced armour, used to cover these areas as well. They've now got some cutouts in them, so it's a little bit more vulnerable to splash damage or penetration from light tanks in the side there. The rear area was 25 and still is 25, so no changes there, and the rear of the tank is still 25 like it always was. The top deck is 13mm, which is the same as it always was. However, with the new turret, the turret previously did not have a top. It was an open top turret. It now has 13mm of armour on top, which is most definitely a buff. One, because it might very slightly protect you from arty, but it probably won't protect you from arty at all, really. But why it's a buff is because it allows you now to fit vents to the M5 Stuart, which you previously couldn't because it was an open top, thus increasing your cruise skill by 5. So that is a real benefit to having a closed top now. So people who love this tank as a scout tank will be able to fit vents now if they wish. So that's definitely a buff in my opinion. Now the turret is a completely different turret. So, well, let's start with the turret ring. The turret ring is 29mm, which is the same as it was before. Now the previous turret had a pretty damn big mantle. It's a big whopping great square mantle, as we'll see in the next comparison video I'll show you in a sec. And that was predominantly 38mm overlying 38mm. Well, we can see here this red section is 45mm. Well, that's better than 38. But the other one was 38 overlying 38. So that ended up being, what, 76 or something. And here, the armour's only 32mm. And in the old turret, it just had a small section about this wide on the side that was 38mm, and the rest was the big mantlet, so it was 38 over 38. Here, huge section of simply 32mm, which you can angle it all you want, but when the armour's that thin, it doesn't make a lot of difference. So it's quite weak there now. The mantlet here, though, is pretty strong. It's 51mm thick, and it's overlying the 45mm of armour in most of the mantlet. When you get close to the gun, it drops away, but for most of it, except there's a section under the gun which is a fairly big cutout, but for most of it it's 51 over 45. So that's definitely a buff in that area, but everywhere else in the front of the turret I would consider it a nerf. So it just depends. If you're lucky and they hit the mantlet, you've got a better chance of bouncing, but if they hit anywhere else, you've got less chance of bouncing. That's it, other than there's a small piece of spaced armour on the side which is 13mm thick, which I guess you could call it a buff. I think it's designed to protect the machine gunner who might stand on the outside of the tank there. That's it. I'll now show you the comparison video. So there you go, the changes to the M5 Stuart, quite substantial when you consider it's got a completely different turret. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more reviews and gameplay, please subscribe to ReginaldESQ. Have fun.